All right, good afternoon to the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust meeting of November 19th, 2024. I'll now call the meeting to order. Item 2 on the agenda is approval of minutes from October 22nd, 2024 trust meeting. If there's no questions or comments, we can take a motion. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. The item passes. Item 3 on the agenda is ratification of claims for October 2024. You can take a motion on this item as well. There's the motion and second. The item passes. Item 4 on the agenda is items for individual consideration. Item 4A is a joint resolution between the City of Oklahoma City and the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust approving an allocation not to exceed $1.5 million.
Mr. Chairman, could I request maybe we move this one to the end? Our partner is not here that was supposed to do a presentation. He may be running a little bit late.
Okay. Could be. All right, let's move on to item 4B. Is the First Amendment to the Economic Development Agreement with Dirt Road Films, LLC for a pay-for-performance film incentive agreement not to exceed $1 million for the proposed feature film project, Dirt Road Feature Film Project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is just a fairly routine amendment to that agreement. And before, I think it had the code name, but now it's this was for the Twisters movie. This is just extending the date that they had to do the application. So they've done all the spending all, and Jill here can kind of walk us through what's happening here.
Sure. I don't have a presentation. I just am here to answer questions. But a lot of these rules that we put into place, as Amy is aware, we're looking at now through the lens that we've gone through a full almost 2 years and have practical experience of going through the processes. Some of them made perfect sense. Some need a little tweaking. In this case, we felt it made perfect sense to lengthen the amount of time a big film has from the time they finish production till they submit their final claim. And in this case, NBC Universal not only had to go through a third-party review for Oklahoma City, they're also having to do one for the state of Oklahoma. They're two totally separate processes with separate rules. I talked to the accountant right before I came over here, and he thinks that he just finished the state review and thinks he'll have the Oklahoma City results to me in 4 weeks. So this adding 100 days to the 90-day requirement to finalize will give us a little bit more leeway to accommodate a variety of sizes of films.
Thank you. Is there
Anybody
any
else?
questions, comments?
Thank you.
I could definitely see with the size of that film needing a little more time. Great film. All right, we have a motion and a second on the approval for this item. Please vote. Item 4B passes. Item 4C is amendment number 4 to contract for architectural services with ADG Black PC, formerly ADG PC, project MB-1540, Myriad Gardens Crystal Bridge renovation. Mr. Sudol?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this, as a reminder, we allocated $3 million to this project. If you remember, Marine had come and done a presentation about how they're having issues getting the temperature down in the Crystal Bridge. So after they'd done the feasibility study and done some more looking at this, they did, I think, decide that they want to go ahead and make these connections of the chiller lines that require some additional A&E work. So Public Works is requesting that we amend this. So this would up the contract on the A&E by $155,000, but we're not allocating any more money to the project. And I think if you recall, the overall amounts we had from different sources, including TIF 8, because this came out of TIF 8, we did think we had a little bit of room in there and some contingency. So again, not allocating any more money, but this would spend a little bit more of that overall money that was allocated for the project.
Any questions, comments? All right, we can take a motion. We have a motion and a second. The item passes. Item 4D on the agenda is the fiscal year 2025 first quarter Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce report. Mr. Copeland.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all again, and want to be able to come to and bring to you in particular information on what we've been doing from a business retention, expansion, and talent work. So it's been a year since I've seen you, and so happy to bring you that report today. Go ahead and you can open up the presentation. So just as I would sort of capture this entire year, what we really saw was that this time last year, we had a lot of really slow or slowing hiring patterns. Job postings were still out there, and we really saw that heat up through the middle part of the year, captured a lot of new jobs being added, so I think our employers really kicked it into gear. We saw some folks that made significant capital investments in terms of particularly headquarters, distribution facilities, folks like Lock Supply, Hobby Lobby, and others. And so there are some significant investments in the region that you'll see as part of our work. You can go to the next slide. So by the end of our calendar year this year, we'll have engaged 250 separate companies and conversations around business trends, gathering those anecdotes that are so important for us to understand what's happening, as well as sort of deeper conversations with 50 of our largest employers. And that's per every year that we do this work. But that really helps us understand what's happening from a business perspective, but really in greater detail what's happening and what the needs are from a talent perspective. You can go to the next slide. By December 12th, we'll have assisted at least 125 different instances with employers and companies, and this is everything from information on state investment programs to direct partnership connections to resources, wage analyses, a variety of things. 38 of those engagements that you saw earlier are specifically focused in aerospace and aviation. The next slide just shows you, again, sort of encapsulates what we saw from a numbers perspective, which is a really large capital investment for regional employers. Again, think folks like Lock Supply and others making really large investments in HQs and those kinds of things. We've captured thus far almost 3,000 jobs that were added by local employers through our engagement. These are existing employers. These are new jobs added, and so we try to be really conservative with understanding, what that looks like. And so, but a lot of those conversations that we've had throughout the year yield those kind of new jobs added. So let's talk about talent just a little bit. That's really the next slide. The passion piece that I get the privilege of serving the economic development team in the city every single day is focused around helping our employers find the talent that they need to continue to grow and thrive. And so, the initiatives that we endeavor to do to support that look like a Talent Link networking event. So we continue to hear employers say, I can't find partners to help me find people. We have nonprofit workforce agencies that say, boy, it's really hard to connect with employers. So we put them in the same room and we help make those connections. We've done a couple of those this year. And every single time people come and they leave, and they say, I didn't know that this agency existed, didn't know this partner existed. We'll be working together moving forward. Again, leading our talent council advisory group. This is really where the chamber gets input on a quarterly basis from some of our leading HR leaders around everything from programming that we're considering, initiatives that we're adopting, and then just overall trends. And that's a really helpful way for us to make sure that those efforts are dialed in. Our team manages the intern OKC program, so 300 summer interns. Again, this summer, it's a single day professional development conference now that really coaches to those professional skills gaps that we continue to hear from employers. So really making sure that those students, as they prepare to enter the workforce, are dialed in with an understanding of what are the habits and practices that you need to develop, what's a mindset that you need to adopt, what are some real strategies to help you be equipped to grow regardless of what your profession will be. We've also been taking a really active role in advising Oklahoma City Public School System on the development of their workforce initiatives. So working very closely with Scott McAdoo and Toby Blair on the development of their overall structure, as well as kind of the content of how that rolls out, really to result in tangible skills that are going to be taught in these flex spaces to help students be equipped to navigate future employment from both a soft skill and a professional skill set. So working heavily in that engagement, as well as engaging in our nonprofit sector. And we'll share in a few moments a deeper part of that work. But there's a significant amount of partnership that I think that can be harnessed to create more talent acquisition opportunities to support our employers. So there's the numbers we already mentioned, the 300 interns, but always the number, and I shared this number last year, and I keep using it every platform I'm given. Over a third of our city is potential talent. Individuals that for a variety of reasons are not participating in the labor market. And so we need to continue to double down on our efforts to align partnerships, to help employers open their talent lens. We need to see this population continue to move back into the labor market and fill critical roles. So to that end, we engage with a number of educational and workforce partners. And so all of that work doesn't show up in the metrics of companies engaged, but know that this is an add-on benefit to the work that we're doing, really to begin to harness the power of those groups. And you see why it matters. This is 34,000 is just the number of students impacted by Oklahoma City public school systems, right? It's a huge potential workforce that we need to continue to work systemically across employers, nonprofit agencies, workforce partners, educational partners, to really begin to align workforce in a way that we move people that want to do better into critical roles and support our economy. So that's really the backbone of the work that we're doing. So as we do that work, one of the things that we have really focused on this year has been, how do we help employers open their lens of where is talent? How do I engage with developing that talent? And so one of the things that we're so excited about was the actual launch of the Oklahoma City Fame chapter. So bringing a national organization, it is an actual earn and learn talent pipeline to produce advanced manufacturing talent. So we have 3 partners that are currently sponsoring learners in this platform, IDEX Advanced Flow Solutions, Omada International, and Climate Control Group. So we have 6 students that are currently working for their sponsoring employers. They are also full-time students with our educational partner, OSU OKC. And so you can see this is signing day. And so you can see the group that was there for orientation. If you move to the next slide, these are the students in action. So this is not an idea. This is actually happening today as we speak. And so this is what it looks like, I think, when the employers understand that they have a role to play in workforce development. And so these employers have jumped in head first. They have invested time, people resources. They have really been part of the learning process, and it is a learning process. When an employer hires an 18-year-old and then puts them in a high-risk environment to keep them safe, to keep them learning, to keep them engaged as a student. But we're really, really excited about our start and where the potential of this lies. Had a great conversation this afternoon with another employer who's interested. So our goal by August of 2025 is to at least double the number of sponsoring employers to 6. I really would like to see 7, which would give us the capacity, we think, to move from 6 participants to 12 to 18. We think that we can move that to eventually we will have 24 enrollees in every single cohort year after year after year, putting that talent into our marketplace. So really excited about that development. And then just within the last month, the Chamber co-hosted with our Criminal Justice Advisory Council an event that we called Unlocking Hidden Talent. And it was really fascinating. We purposefully invited employers. We had to cap enrollment in that event at 160. Most all the attendees represented employers. And we really just told the story of, if we open our talent lens, there's more talent available, but there's some things we as employers need to do, resources we need to embrace, mindsets that we can explore that will help us find that talent. I knew it was a success when one of our large customer service groups that was a recruitment project here to Oklahoma City, who we've played a significant role in helping them understand the local market and supported their talent ramp up and all those things, reached out and said, how do we get in touch with Judge Stoner to understand more how this works and to see if we can incorporate that into our hiring process? So it was a success from top to bottom just to bring awareness around the opportunity. And so we really think that this will be a considerable part of our efforts going forward. So really pleased to report to you that happened. So just real quickly, I would say this sort of, as we look ahead, these are the kinds of things that I want to be able to report to you about this time next year for 2025. One, that we continue to aid our public education partners in the formation of talent pathways and partnerships that are going to be so needed to help the educational outcomes for our K through 12 system really be aligned with what the skill set and the needs are for our employers. So we have a survey that is out. It just launched this morning, and we're getting feedback about what are the professional skills that are needed that you see coming out of K through 12 and coming out of our post-secondary partners to really align them for being able to be successful in navigating a professional career. I mean, there's certainly a place for specific feedback on skills, but what we're continuing to hear from employers is that it's so much of those professional skills, the ability to communicate, to problem solve, to think critically are going to be such essential skills. So we're validating that with our employers, and we're really passing that on to our educational partners. Another huge component will be to continue the work that we're doing in our nonprofit community. You know, my dream is to see our nonprofit community as a consolidated talent acquisition force in Oklahoma City, where our employers can rely on the good jobs being filled by people that really want those jobs and have the opportunity to be supported to do better. So that's going to be another big scope of our work this year. And then lastly, just convening and aligning partners to get them at the right spot, in the right order, so that we can compress the journey for undeveloped talent or talent that wants to enter the labor market and employers that have critical roles that we need to get filled. And so that's going to really be the work of talent and workforce that supports the work of economic development and the work of the city. So happy to conclude there, see if you have any questions, but I appreciate your time and the opportunity to present. So any questions?
Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, Miriam.
Mike.
There we go. I had a question on your earlier slides. The link,
The talent link.
the talent
event,
link, is that just open to members of the chamber, or is it open to all organizations?
So the distribution list that we use have been folks that we've engaged with for the purpose of business retention and expansion. And so as you know, that isn't always, oftentimes they happen to be chamber members, but it is not exclusive to chamber members. So companies that we've been engaging with for business retention expansion purposes. And there's room to expand those opportunities in the future, but that's really where we started.
Okay, great. And then on the other part of this, the capacity for the Oklahoma City Public Schools, you have the 34,000 is kind of the potential there, right?
That's right. And that represents top to bottom.
Okay.
Correct.
Is that specific to the possibility for internships, or is that just kind of an overall number of what we're exposed?
So that's the whole district. And the reason that I use that number is because when we're talking to the leadership at OKCPS about how to put together a workforce development strategy, part of what we're saying to them is this, and they're picking up on, is this can't start in 10th grade. This can't start in 8th grade. This has to start at the very beginning. Because part of what we're asking them to equip them with is not just technical skills, but are those skills that are going to be essential to be able to be successful in those jobs in the future. And that starts all the way at the very beginning. And so that's why we include that, because the potential impact is that over time, in aggregate, you're going to impact the entire system top to bottom, particularly with a sustained effort. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And last part, do you have actuals on how many we've been able to place in internships to date?
So that is, so the event that we do, we're not placing students in internships.
Okay.
We're providing and facilitating an event for employers that have already obtained interns. And then we're providing essentially extra coaching and professional development event. So placing internships has not been a program of work per se, although I'm oftentimes playing connector, those kinds of things. So we're helping make sure that employers know how to get in touch with universities to advertise those opportunities, that they know who to network with in the career services offices so they can post those internships. So we've not been playing one-to-one connector. We've just been making sure that the employers and the entities that have those students are connected together.
Okay. And that's the OKC intern part of.
Yes, the intern OKC, that's what we're doing, is the professional development event for interns once they've obtained those positions with employers. We're providing that event as a supplemental piece over the summer.
Okay. Thank you.
And to add on that, Lee, we have roughly 300 interns every year, and we've been doing this, 12 years, 12, 15 years?
Oh, I think it's, in one form or another has been for a really long
And
time.
so different employers send their interns, and this is a really great program for that one day, especially because a lot of our employers are saying they need the soft skills development.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Now, to be fair, I have helped a number of individuals that have reached out and connected with those kinds of things. Somehow I'm on the list for OU as a contact for Thunder internships. So I think I've answered a dozen emails this last week about that, but we're doing kind of systemically rather than individually. So
Yeah, I was just curious to see how that all, comes together with all the
internships
students
and those kinds of things absolutely are going to be essential going forward for a citywide workforce piece. It's going to be really prevalent in our K through 12 system. So we're asking in that survey, where would you be willing to engage in terms of internships, externships, work-based learning, that kind of thing. Anyone else?
Any other questions? Nope.
Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate your work.
Appreciate you. All right, we'll take a motion in a second. There's the motion in a second. Please vote. And the item was received. Item 4E is the fiscal year 2025 first quarter Alliance for Economic Development of Oklahoma City report. Mr. Sudol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we had another report on the previous report just two meetings ago. So this one came out a little quicker, and just there's not a whole lot difference between the two. A couple things to highlight. We continue to work on closing out the ARPA programs that we were doing on behalf of the city, and that's one we'll be working through. Had very high demand on it, working through solutions to come up with, are there additional funds to fund some of the demand that was above and beyond what was provided, from the city originally. So that's something we'll be having some discussions on in the future, just to give you a heads up. In addition, kind of looking in, there's several pages here, but a couple of development projects wanted to just mention. The Hill, so this is a project that's a project of urban renewal, and just letting you know that there had been a new plan in place to finish that out, and we actually at the last Urban Renewal Authority Board meeting approved phase 1 of the completion of that, which would be 12 homes to start being constructed no later than March of 25. So that has I think it's about just under 50 homes is the total to finish out that, and it's done in 5 phases, so this would be phase 1, so that's exciting. And then the other one I wanted to report to you that's been on the list for a while is the Alley's End project at 4th and Gaylord. That's a very, I'm not sure, but I think it's probably the largest brand new build affordable housing project that's been done in many, many years in downtown Oklahoma City. It's over 200 units. I think it's about 214 units. So that actually did close. So we are closed on that. Construction should begin sometime here by first quarter of next year. So that is exciting because it's a very difficult project, had a very complicated financing structure, and I know there was lots of help. Also, that was our last big affordable housing allocation from this body there. So those are the highlights. Again, the report's in your packet. If there's other specific projects you have questions on, I'll be happy to answer those.
Any questions? Comments? All right, let's take a motion to receive. Motion and second. Please vote. Item passes. Item 5 on the agenda is the General Manager's Report. Ms. Boggs?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Boggs, and I'm going to present to you our General Manager's Report for October of 2024. I wanted to let you know, as you've heard before, we had a major financial system change in April of this year. The entire city of Oklahoma City switched to a new financial software, and as with any new implementation, there's going to be some bumps along the way, but I just wanted to assure you that we are working through all of those hurdles and challenges. I actually have a few people in this room that I want to thank personally that have helped us with some of this. We have Nicole Tower and Preston Golden from our finance department representing budget and accounting. I want to tell you, the finance department as a whole has been working really hard to get the right reporting that we need to make sure that our data is accurate and useful to you as a trust. Our new financial report, you're going to see a new layout here that's different from what you've seen in the past. You'll still have the same budget categories that you've seen before. We'll have our general economic development, GOLT, and then each of the TIF funds will have their own report. But at the top of every page, you'll see the beginning fund balance. That's the leftover revenue minus expenses from the prior fiscal year that's rolling in. And then we'll list out the revenues and expenses. A few pieces that we're going to be adding in the coming months is outstanding encumbrances. We have a detailed debt table that we'd like to provide for you on each of our TIFs that have debt associated with them. And then the project expenditures that you're used to seeing in our financial report, we're going to incorporate that into the project status report. So that part will be coming later. So if you'll flip with me, I'm going to jump around just a little bit in our financials. On page 1, our general economic development category. Within this category, we have our major contracts that we manage annually. Think of Myriad Botanical Gardens, the Chamber of Commerce, Scissortail Park, First Americans Museum, and you'll notice that the fund balance here is a little bit higher than normal. That's the $15 million that we received from the sale of the Skirvin. It's sitting here in this fund, so I wanted to make sure I pointed that out to you. If you look on page 2 for the GOLT fund, of the original $135 million from the 2007 and 2017 allocations, we have $36.9 million as our beginning fund balance. The expenses for the current year, we have about $6 million in expenses. $4 million of that has gone to the INC Trust for the mega site land acquisition, and the other $2 million is the Fairground Flats Affordable Housing Unit that just finished earlier this year. On page 3, we start our TIF report. So TIF 2 is our largest of all of the TIFs. It's the downtown area and the Skirvin Hotel. And our fund balance is the largest that we've seen on all of our other TIFs. It's $43 million. And our largest expense you're going to see here is for our debt service, the $7.4 million. I'm going to skip ahead to page 5. We have our Devon TIF, TIF 8. Our large expenses here are going to be public strategies. We paid $650,000, and then we have a debt service payment of interest only of $629,000. On page 6, we have the Northeast Renaissance, which includes TIF 9 and TIF 15. There's a $5 million reserve here, but of that, we have 3.8 that's encumbered for the Hamlin project. Page 7 is going to be First National. We have a $6 million fund balance starting out the year, but 3.7 of that is in a reserve account for the First National note. 1.8 million, it was our debt service payment for the First National loan. And then on page 9, we have our Omni Fund, TIF 13. It has a $17.8 million beginning fund balance, and our largest expense has been related to our debt service as well. And our final page on this report is TIF 14, First Americans Museum, and there's one project that's associated with all of the revenue and the expenses in the fund balance, and that's the Ocana project off of the river. This one is nearing completion. All of the revenue that's been collected at this point has been related to sales tax associated with construction of this project. They're hoping to open later this in the spring or early summer of 2025, and at that point we will start collecting on operations, so these numbers will change a little bit, but you're seeing both the city incentive and the Leverage Act, which is the state match portion, in those numbers as well. And the last part of your general manager's report is our project status report. This is the same format that you're used to seeing in prior months, but in the coming months, we will have some adjustments there. We're going to pull in a little bit more of the financial data for all of the TIFs. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those at this time.
Any questions for Ms. Boggs?
Would make one quick comment. Just again, I think when we get that next piece of the report with the encumbrances, that's key. So I just want to remind folks, like the balances in the GOLT fund, the balances, and doesn't necessarily mean that's all available, because we've done a lot of allocations that haven't paid out yet. So that'll be the other really key piece when we get that from the new financial system.
Yes.
Thank you. Do we need to vote to receive the general manager's report? Okay. All right, let's jump back to item 4A, which is the joint resolution between the City of Oklahoma City and the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust, approving an allocation not to exceed $1.5 million. Mr. Sudol.
So yeah, I'll fall on the sword on this one. I think we had a communication snafu with our developer, and he has been very, very good. It's Andy Burnett. He has showed up to I don't know how many public meetings. He was here at council this morning to present, so I will fall on the sword on that one. And if it's okay with everyone, I'll walk through the presentation. We've been working with them on this quite a bit. First of all, before we jump in, what this does is this would approve an allocation of not to exceed 1.5 million, and I want to give you a little bit of background. So at council this morning, we introduced an item to amend the Northeast Renaissance TIF to add a new increment district that's called Increment District D, that is at 63rd and MLK. So this is represented on the screen up here. This is the property that right now, this is a proposal that they have, and I'll walk through this, but actually, right now there's some site work started and some beginning construction, but it's pretty much was a vacant piece of property. We started discussions on this more than a year ago. So if you're familiar with this, right north of Remington Park, right south of I-44. We had begun discussions about potentially creating a TIF here. Our normal 25-year TIF had gone through and talked with the community. I'd done a community meeting at Millwood. There were lots of concerns raised about, Millwood having such a small geographic footprint. That was raised from both the school, other constituents in the area. So we had lots of other discussions. It actually came to a TIF review committee, and this is unusual that we decided to table it at that TIF review committee in October, defer it for a couple weeks, have some more discussions, and came back with really a compromise. And what's being proposed is we create a very short-term TIF, a 7-year TIF. And the reason I want to give you this context is originally when we were working through this, what we were going to be proposing on this project was to provide 30% of the taxes generated back to the project over a longer period of time. I believe it was a 15-year period with not to exceed 1.5 million. The school district and other constituents asked us to shorten this TIF period so that once we can get this project done, the taxes would more quickly go back into the other taxing jurisdictions. And in this case, that was something we were not opposed to, because this wasn't a larger, kind of district-wide play. This was something that was very specific. So what we worked out was a 7-year TIF, but in order to get enough incentive to get to the number we needed to get to, it's what's being brought before you today is structured as 100%, but not to exceed the $1.5 million. So we've had to compress that into a 7-year period. So it really depends how fast this development happens, and what's being proposed here. Up in the kind of upper right-hand corner is a volleyball project, and this is what's called Boombox, and it's really interesting project. It's in concert, kind of working with USA Volleyball, that this would host, local tournaments and things for youth volleyball, competition volleyball, also have, just recreational things. If, in addition, what they're trying to bring here would also be a pickleball development, and then also some restaurants and hotel. So I believe right now they have LOIs signed with the pickleball organization. They also have LOIs signed with Donato's Pizza and Starbucks. The hotel, and then on the very far western side, right against Martin Luther King, that would be proposal to have more of a casual dining, sit-down type of restaurant there. But those are not, they don't have anything ready to go yet on that, but are working on it. But it's basically, depending on how fast different parts of this development gets going would really dictate how fast they would get to the $1.5 million. That part of what this also does is it's contingent upon the TIF amendment being approved by council, which was introduced today. It would be heard, final hearing on December 3rd. In addition, it would require $10 million of investment on the low side, which would be more than what just the volleyball piece. So they would have to do some of these other pieces. And then again, our projections in working with them are that if they only did the volleyball piece, they might get to about $700,000 of TIF, but so they really are going to be required to build more to get to that bigger number. So that's really what we were looking at on this. It's been a very long process, a lot of talk and behind the scenes, a lot of community meetings, a lot of very long process, and we think it's been a good process worked out with constituents in that area to try to minimize the effects, but get this development off and running. And I will say, when you think about the Adventure District, lots of wonderful projects there, lots of things that have happened in terms of public projects, but there has not been a lot of private development in a very, very long time. And we were trying to think what the last thing was. I think it was maybe the Sonic, 20 years ago. So this is exciting if we can really get some things started here. And there are some other development sites in the area that hopefully this can kind of get some things started over there. And there's some more renderings of kind of the volleyball concept and what the pickleball may look like. And this piece here was really just the volleyball piece. So we think we'll get over the 10 million, but I think the reality is they're probably going to have to build more than this to get to that. So go back one more to this here. So just as we always talk about, we looked at this, kind of worked through their financials with them, and it was one of the deals that without TIF on this, it's a very low return. We looked at a 4.4% cash-on-cash return, but looking at it with TIF, putting this help in gets them, more up to about a 9.7% return. So this is what we're looking at. We were originally looking over a 12-year period because we were thinking that was about what it was going to take to get to that level of TIF help. But again, in kind of our negotiations, getting this shrunk down, the length of the TIF, we've had to compress that.
Any questions for Mr. Siddle?
I don't know if you know this part, it might be more on the operator, but I was just curious since it's related to the volleyball courts. Do they have any kind of incentive or agreement with community volleyball projects to allow them to use these facilities once they're built, or is it just going to be private?
No, that is something we talked about, and I've actually been having discussions like with Millwood, for example, that they are looking at offering and providing some time for the schools to use it and potentially other community partners. I think that's something they're open to having discussions with folks on, but that is the intent. We've had quite a few discussions, I know, with Millwood about that.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely, just from personal experience, I know that's the hardest thing to find is public spaces and spaces for community to use for volleyball specifically. It's such a high demand sport, and most of the time private groups rent out a full facility and it's not accessible to community, so I'd love to just see that be in the talks.
They
Thank you.
they are very open to that, and we've had
Great.
quite a few discussions on that already. But I think, admittedly, a lot of those have been with folks kind of in that area. So if there are other groups,
Yeah.
folks can contact me and I'll put them in touch with
Thank you.
Andy.
Relative to their collaboration with USA Volleyball, will the capacity of this footprint allow us to have regional competitions?
That is the intent for kind of like I know the developer, this is a passion project for them because his kids play the regional volleyball stuff. So that is what the aim is. And part of that is, that's a part of the ultimate plan, trying to have a restaurant and a hotel there so they can host some of these tournaments that are going to a lot of other cities
Absolutely. I
right
mean,
now.
we
Yep.
need the venue for that. And have they anticipated the number of room keys for that Hampton?
Not yet, and that's something I would say we can get some more information on that. There's been a lot of different things contemplated, and they had some potential partners, and I think the length of time it took kind of working through this. There's been some that have maybe lost interest, but others that have, but they're still working on that right now. That's the piece that is, even though he put a flag up there on his presentation, that's who they're going after, but that is not a done deal yet.
Anything else? Nope. Thank you, Mr. Siddle. We can go ahead and take a motion. Please vote. The item passes. That brings us to item 6 on the agenda. Any comments from staff?
No, sir.
Trustees? Do we have any citizens to be heard? Not today. No, okay. All right, takes us to item 7. We are adjourned.